After years of calling Donald Trump an authoritarian Russian plant criminal whose sole purpose in life is the destruction of democracy, the Democrats were shocked this week when someone finally tried to assassinate the former president. People on the left immediately came out with calls to lower the temperature by toning down the rhetoric, all the while frantically going back and trying to edit their posts which compared Donald Trump to Hitler. Joe Biden was asked by Lester Holt if he felt that the central theme of his campaign, which seems to focus on Donald Trump being a threat to democracy, had anything to do with the attempt on Trump's life. And in the most cogent statement Biden has made in a long time, he said, and I almost quote, "It does not count when Democrats demonize Republicans because Democrats are good and Republicans are bad. And didn't you know that Donald Trump lied a lot during the debate? And he is a threat to democracy, and I have to be able to talk about it, and also I'm tired and want a nap." End of fake quote. Republicans, meanwhile, gave thanks for Donald Trump's safety, as well as the coldest photo in modern political history that will single-handedly win Donald Trump the next election. We're going to talk about it today. I'm Tyler Chrestman. Welcome to the Chrestman Conversation. Okay, hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the assassination attempt against Donald Trump, as well as going over Donald Trump's pick for Vice President, J.D. Vance. Now, I guess first it's important to go over what happened the day that the former president, got shot at. And there are a lot of things. There's a lot of conspiracy theories going around the internet, and we're going to maybe go through a couple of those. But I want to encourage everyone out there, don't get caught up in the conspiracy theories. Just don't do it. There is no point. We're going to go over why a lot of the conspiracy theories that you're seeing out there are just nonsensical, and you just need to ignore them flat out. And we're going to talk about what a massive failure this was on the part of the Secret Service. But let's talk first. Let's just lay down some facts of the case, and then we'll talk about it in a more abstract way and talk about some of the implications that this has for our country. So what do we know? First, some 20-year-old punk who we're not going to name, because what we don't want to do in this world and what the media very irresponsibly does is make shooters famous. This has been shown that it actually has an effect on these people who just want the fame. They want the clout, they want to get famous, and they don't care how it is. They will do something bad to do it. There have been some interesting things that have published that you say you should not post the names or pictures or likeness of the people who commit violent acts, whether it's terrorists or mass shooters or this guy who attempted to assassinate the president. So all we're going to do is just call him a loser and move on. But we will say some things about him. He was 20 years old. What we know is that he managed to climb up on the roof of a building nearby the stage where Donald Trump was speaking, and he managed to fire a rifle, what appeared to be at least a couple of times, at the president. There's some dispute over how many bullets he shot, how many bullets the Secret Service shot. It doesn't really matter. He fired shots at the president. Donald Trump was struck in the ear by a bullet, which appeared to cause him, he had blood running down his face. Let's actually, real quick, let's just take a look, by the way, at this photo that is going to win Donald Trump the next presidential election. Look at this photo. So this is in the immediate aftermath of the shooting. Donald Trump was hit in the ear. He drops down. Secret Service dog piles on him. He then stands up. He appears to try to force Secret Service back to the podium, and he pumps his fist in the air. He's got blood on his face, and he yells what appears to be fight, fight, fight. At least that's what it looks like into the microphone. It's hard to tell. That photo right there is going to win Donald Trump the election, in my opinion. If nothing else, that is the coldest political photo we have seen in a very long time. I can't think of something that's that cool that a politician has done. To get shot in the face, okay? Oh, it's just the ear. No. He got shot in the face, and then he stood up, pumped his fist in the air while still bleeding, and yelled, fight, 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 into a microphone. That's what bravery looks like. All the talk of Donald Trump from people for years and years saying things like he's a coward or a bully or blah, blah, blah. This erases that. This is not the act of a cowardly man. A cowardly man would have run away. He would have put his head down. He would have hurried off the stage. Donald Trump, whatever you might say about him negatively, you're not going to call him a coward anymore. It's not true if you do. That is an incredibly brave photo. It makes him look strong. It makes him look virile. And it is the photo that's going to win him the election, if nothing else. He was already up, but that's going to be a big help. There was, unfortunately, a person killed. The bullets that hit Donald Trump, or possibly the ones that missed him, went past him, struck a firefighter on stage by the name of Corey. Compantero, I believe is how they were saying it. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name. But he was a volunteer firefighter. I think people are saying he's retired, I heard, but he was a firefighter. He's 50-year-old. It sounds like he was killed because he put himself in the line of fire and tried to protect his family who was there with him, so he died a hero. But that's just what he is. He's a firefighter, and I know that to be a good firefighter, not to be a firefighter, but to be a good firefighter, you do have to have some bravery. You have to have some willingness to put yourself in the line of fire. And he demonstrated that he had that kind of character. So obviously it's a tragedy when anyone is killed, and it's a tragedy that this man was killed. So we mourn his loss. We're sorry to the family, but he's a hero. And this is what, not that he would have wanted to die, but I'm sure a man like him would understand that sacrificing himself for others was probably the most noble way he was ever going to go. And so once again, that's who he was. And it's incredibly sad. And Donald Trump did a very moving tribute to him last night at the RNC. And that's all we can say about that. It's an incredible sadness. If Donald Trump would have been killed, we would have mourned. This man is killed, we should mourn. And anyone who is killed, it's a bad thing. Even when people we don't like get killed, it's not a good thing. There are people in this world, this guy who shot at the president, I'm glad that they shot and killed him. I am. I think that obviously if you're going to commit an act of violence and violence is committed back to you, I'm not going to mourn you. But even when people we don't like are shot and killed, it's not a good thing. It's not good for the world that violence exists. And even violence in self-defense is not always, it doesn't make you feel good. It shouldn't make you feel joy necessarily. Committing violence, I consider myself a man of violence. I am very capable of violence. I have spent a lot of my life doing martial arts, boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. I train with guns. I enjoy that. I like being able to defend myself. But if I have to hurt somebody, I'm not going to enjoy it. It's not going to be something that I relish in. I'm not a sociopath or some sort of psychopath. These are not things that good men love to do necessarily. I'm not going to act like I would not lose sleep over having to do it, but that's the way it is. It's not a good thing for the world that violence exists, even violence in self-defense, even violence to protect your loved ones. So this 20-year-old who was killed, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for the world that another 20-year-old gets shot and killed, but it is a good thing when violent people are dealt with. So we kind of walk this fine line. This was a massive security failure by the Secret Service. Now, this is why you're seeing conspiracy theorists on both sides that are playing to improbabilities. You'll see people on the left who think that this is some sort of false flag setup, which is absolute nonsense. And you're seeing people on the right who think that it was an inside job, as though this punk who shot Donald Trump is a CIA plant or part of the Secret Service apparatus that allowed him to do this. And no, the answer is no. We'll go in why both those things are wrong. Neither of those things are true. What this was a massive security failure due to a series of missteps made by the security personnel and an unforced error that allowed this person to shoot based on bad policy, bad security protection detail, and some mitigating circumstances that prevented the Secret Service from doing their job to the best of their abilities. Now, we'll go over a couple of them right here real quick. For example, the Secret Service observed this loser about 3 hours before the shots against the president occurred. Now, why do we know that they saw him? They were aware of him because he was photographed by the Secret Service 3 hours before taking this shot. Why was he photographed? Because he was walking around with a rangefinder in hand. Now, what's a rangefinder for those of you who are not gun aficionados? A rangefinder, basically, it looks like a binocular. So sometimes most of the time it's a single lens that looks like one half of a binocular. And all it does is it basically sends out a little laser pointer. It doesn't actually do a laser, but it sends out a beam of electricity. It hits whatever it's looking at, and it bounces back. And the rangefinder then reads the distance between. It times basically how far or how quickly it goes back and forth and makes a rough estimate as to how far away whatever you're looking at is. So, for example, if I pointed at my front door, which is 20 feet away, it would send the light out, it'd hit the door, it'd bounce back to the rangefinder, and it would estimate 20 feet, whatever it is. So he was walking around with one of these. So Secret Service said, well, that's weird. Why would he have a rangefinder? They took a photograph of him, which is a photograph you've seen circulating around social media, or one of the photographs you've seen. So they were aware of him. Okay, well, maybe the guy doesn't have binoculars. Maybe he just has a rangefinder. Maybe he brought it to observe the president from distance. You can't arrest someone. Rangefinders aren't illegal. It's not wrong to carry one. A lot of people just will have them in their truck, for example. I don't carry one with me for a purpose, but I own one. It's not illegal to have a rangefinder. A lot of people have them. But the Secret Service were aware. You say, all right, well, that's a little weird. So they took a picture of him because it's good. They take pictures of suspicious-looking characters, and then they run them through a database. They're looking for people who jump out. He doesn't have anything that's going to make him jump out, but they had a picture of him. Then the next security failure comes from this decision that was made by the Secret Service. So before the president makes an appearance somewhere, the Secret Service will do a forward scouting report, or at least they should. I'm assuming that they do because you can't make security decisions without it. Who knows what their decision-making process felt like in this event, but I would assume they did a forward scouting report where they mapped out locations, possible places where people could shoot. They made a decision that there was a roof. So when you look at the area in Butler, Pennsylvania, where Donald Trump was speaking, the stage is set. There are a few buildings. And the way that this typically works is that Secret Service will cordon off an area, and they will be responsible for people coming in and going out of that area. This is where you get the wands. This is where you get the metal detectors set up. This is where Secret Service is in charge of security. So imagine, not that this would be the case, but let's just imagine, for example, Donald Trump was giving a talk somewhere downtown. Well, Secret Service might cordon off a 4-block area, or maybe not that big, depending on how big, where he's at. But imagine 4 blocks. Well, Secret Service would be responsible for the interior of the 4 blocks. They would be responsible for the egress points, the entrance and egress points. They would be responsible for checking people in and checking people out. That's their job. Outside of that perimeter they normally coordinate with the local police force, which then does security outside, whether that's traffic control or securing whatever. That's the job of the police outside. So outside of the security zone was this building that the shooter climbed up on. It's not very far away. I saw a lot of things. They're saying less than 400 meters away. So think of a track and 1 lap around the track. It was less than that. So I can run a lap around a track in a minute. Okay, I'm sure a lot of people are faster than that. A lot of people are slower than that. But think about that. How long it takes you to run, or you could run for a minute. That's how far away it was. Not very far for a person who is adequate with a rifle. And if you have a rangefinder, if you know how to dial in a scope, basically it's a very simple process to shoot that distance. It's not going to be the simplest in the world, but it's not an overly complicated shot. If you put most people who shoot rifles at a 400-meter distance, they're going to do fairly well. So at this distance, there was a building that the shooter eventually shot from, but it had what the Secret Service has said, it has a sloped roof. And because of the sloped roof, the decision was made that they were not going to have any teams on the roof for safety reasons. This was a terrible decision. It was a stupid decision. And the roof, when you look at pictures, is not that, it doesn't look dangerous at all. And this seems like a terrible excuse by the Secret Service as to why they did not secure the roof of a place that was directly overlooking the president. This is where the conspiracy theories can start in. This is where you say, well, who made that decision? Were they in on the plot? What is the purpose? Why did they do this? And it's not an unfair question to ask. I'm just saying there's nothing that suggests that that is true, that the Secret Service is in on it. It was a bad security decision. The fact that maybe they had a drone up, I have no idea why they wouldn't have observed this person beforehand, but they did not go up on the roof. The Secret Service did not go up on the roof. The local law enforcement has said, despite the fact that these buildings were outside of the cordoned off area that Secret Service was responsible for, the local police force said that all they were requested to do was traffic control in and out of the event. The sheriff, the local, I don't know if he's actually a sheriff or whatever he was, the police captain, the local officer in charge, he came out and said, we were only responsible for traffic. We were not told to secure buildings. We were not told to do this. Our entire coordination was about traffic control. So he basically is throwing the Secret Service under the bus, said this was their responsibility. People on the ground observed this young moron up on the roof with a rifle up to 30 minutes before he shot at the president. You have video that is emerging of people on the ground filming him lying prone on the roof with a gun. They are yelling at law enforcement. He's on the roof. He has a gun. At one point, it was reported a local police officer walked up the roof or walked up the ladder, got on the roof. The person spun, pointed a rifle at the officer, forced him back down on the roof, turned around, prone back out, and then hurriedly fired the shots at Donald Trump. The only reason Donald Trump is alive today is because at the very last second, he turned his head slightly to the right. Now, this, if you track the bullet's flight path, and I've seen people do this already, the bullet hit him in the right ear. And in order to hit that part of his body, that means that it was aimed and it would have struck almost directly in his temple. But because he turned, so imagine this. Imagine the, it's hard to do from the side. So imagine this. So if you're aimed here and I turn my head, that's how you wind up hitting the ear. So you're aimed at the temple sideways. And at the last second, I turn my head to the right. Look where my finger goes. I'm not going to move my finger, but it's pointed right at my temple. And I turn my head. That's how he wound up getting hit in the ear. That bullet would have struck him directly in the side of the head. We would have watched Donald Trump die on stage had he not, whatever you want to call it, some miracle, divine intervention, whatever it might be. Donald Trump turned his head and was struck in the ear. The other shots, the follow-up shots, were more hurriedly done, and they missed. They went wide. I believe those are the shots that killed the firefighter on stage. So this was not, for the people on the left side who have said this is a false flag, this is not a false flag. There is absolutely no way in hell you are going to shoot at the president and come that close to murdering him on purpose to win him an election? This is not rational. This is not true. He didn't go down and then, like the WWE, pull a razor blade out and cut at his ear. He was shot in the head, and the bullet was a fraction of a millimeter away from striking him in the head and killing him. The little 15-degree tilt to the right that he did to look at a chart at the very last second saved his life. It's not a false flag. It just absolutely isn't. Anyone who peddling in that is a conspiracy theorist and not even a good one. At least speculating that it was an inside job is entertaining. The false flag thing is not. Donald Trump wasn't in on this. This shooter wasn't in on this. And certainly no one who's going to be part of a false flag is going to volunteer to be murdered in return, which is exactly what happened. There's also video that's come out of the sniper team, the Secret Service sniper team. They are on a roof. They appear to have the shooter in their sights. And for whatever reason, they are not given a go-ahead to shoot and neutralize the threat. This is the biggest failure, in my opinion. It's not the cop who went up on the roof, the local police officer who went up on the roof and who was threatened and had to go back down. I think that you don't retreat. You should engage the suspect at that point, but whatever. I don't know exactly all the circumstances that happened. I just know it makes you sound like a moron that you left some guy with a rifle up on the roof to shoot at Donald Trump, but I don't know what happened, so who knows. On the other hand, the Secret Service agents who are on video clearly looking at the suspect, then he shoots, then they open fire and engage. What is the policy here? What is the reasoning? What is the rationale that prevented these people from shooting first? I've heard, again, I don't know if this is Secret Service policy or if this is speculation. I've heard they have a do not shoot first policy. The idea being that they don't want to shoot first and engage someone who's not a threat and kill someone on accident who was out there with a telescope. Okay. That's a terrible policy. I'm sorry. You have a person, a trained sniper with someone in their scope with what appears to be a rifle aimed at the president. One, you do not get the president off the stage before the shots come out? Who made that decision? Why was it not immediately, we have to go, there's a threat, we have to go? Why did we not shoot him first? Why did we let this person shoot 3 shots and kill someone before we engaged? That is absolutely ridiculous. This is not a war zone. We are talking about a criminal pointing a gun at someone. The second that a gun is pointed at you, you are authorized to use deadly force. It's not the military. In the military, there's a different rules of engagement. There's a different code of conduct. You are not necessarily always allowed to shoot just because someone is brandishing a firearm. Sometimes you have to actually wait until they engage you. That's not this. That should not be what the Secret Service job is. The Secret Service is protecting what is arguably the most important person in the world, and they should be able to shoot first. That's a stupid policy that needs to change. The director of the Secret Service is this woman named Kimberly Cheadle, I believe is how her last name is pronounced. I'm not 100% sure on that. But there's a lot of talk about her working for PepsiCo and all this different stuff, and that really is not a big deal because she spent 26 years in the Secret Service. So it's true. She worked in the Secret Service as a field agent. Then she went to PepsiCo where she was the head of their security, international security for a while. And then she came back to the Secret Service. She has extensive Secret Service experience. Does that make her good? No. Has she done a good job? Should she resign? No, she hasn't done a good job. And yes, she should absolutely resign. She made it clear. The buck stops with her. It's her job to protect the president. You failed. Whatever policies you have in place, whatever people you have in place around Donald Trump, you failed to protect him. He was shot in the head. You step down or you're fired. Joe Biden's not going to fire her. He should fire her. But also she should probably just resign in disgrace because terrible, 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 terrible job. It's good. The shooter got killed. But how did we wind up at this point where a 20-year-old punk, idiot, wound up on the roof with a rifle shooting at the president? Why are we there? How did we get here? You're seeing calls to turn down the rhetoric, as I said in the opening. And also, just quick to mention, I have an article up on the American Thinker. I'll post links to it on the page. You should go check it out because it's basically talking about this idea. Everyone is saying we got to turn down the rhetoric. We have to cool the temperature off. We have to take a step back from the name calling and the ad hominems and blah, blah, blah. I don't believe you. I don't believe you because so many times I've seen this and it just cracks me up. All the people who talk about Donald Trump foments violence. Donald Trump advocates for violence. Donald Trump his violent rhetoric is to blame. Well, first of all, I disagree that Donald Trump has unique rhetoric. He speaks in a unique way, certainly. But his rhetoric, the level, the temperature, the tone of his rhetoric, I don't find it unique in politics today. I look at the left, and I see people who have basically been begging for Donald Trump to be assassinated for years, and now they want to say, oh, my God, how did it ever come to this? Well, I have a guess. My guess is when you spent the last 8 years calling Donald Trump Hitler, and when you said he's a threat to democracy, And when you say he's a strongman authoritarian who wants to rip up the Constitution and set the Declaration of Independence on fire, when you say these kind of things every day, well, why wouldn't you kill Hitler? Why wouldn't a rational person want to stop the murder of 6 million Jews and 80 million people across the world? If Donald Trump really was Hitler, why wouldn't you not kill him? So when the Democrats say Donald Trump is Hitler, and then they're surprised when a Democrat shoots at Donald Trump, I don't believe you. You're the ones who are basically telling people that he should do that. Because you don't get to say, well, Donald Trump is Hitler, but we also should be nice to Hitler. We can't kill Hitler. How do you reconcile those two things? How do you square that circle? How do you explain that Donald Trump is the biggest threat to democracy that's ever existed, and he hates the Constitution, and he'll never leave office, and blah, 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 and yet you also say we have to respect him and be nice to him? Okay, well, you're lying. One way or the other, you're lying. Either you're lying and you don't really believe Donald Trump is Hitler, or you're lying that you think he should be left alone. Because you don't get it both ways. You don't get to pick what has become evil incarnate. Now, I think there are worse people than Hitler. I know, call me crazy. I think Stalin, I think Mao are worse than Hitler. But Hitler, he's a pretty bad guy. And you don't get to call somebody Hitler or Mao or Stalin or Pol Pot and then say, well, but also we got to leave him alone. That doesn't make sense. It's not a real argument. Either you don't believe what you're saying one way or you don't believe it the other way. It makes you a liar. Because if you put me back in 1939 in Germany and I know what I know about the future, and then you say, oh, you have an opportunity to slip some arsenic in Hitler's tea, do you do it? I go, yeah, I'd probably kill Hitler. Hitler's a bad guy. He killed a lot of people, caused 80 million deaths across the world due to the war he started, as well as the Holocaust and the genocide that he committed against people. He's a bad guy. I wouldn't lose any sleep over killing him. Okay, well, explain why, if Donald Trump really is Hitler, if he wants to kill people and he's going to do all these things. First of all, I don't think you really believe that, but if you do, then explain to me why this person was wrong to shoot at him. And I don't see how you have it both ways. I'm not surprised. Tucker Carlson said 6 months ago that he knew someone was going to shoot at Donald Trump. I would have said the same thing. I'm not surprised at all that this happened. It makes no sense to me why it wouldn't have. You don't get to act as though Donald Trump is a threat to the very fabric of the country and the world and then go, oh, I can't believe someone would shoot at him. Oh, you can't believe it? I can't. Of course I can believe it. I don't know how he's made it this far and not had anyone shoot at him. The amount of vitriol and hate the man receives and the amount of demonization that he receives in the media and on social media. I don't see why it's taken this long for someone to shoot at him. And it's terrible. It's political violence. We should all abhor it. We should all hate it. We should all wish it was blinked out of existence. But I'm not surprised by it. You can't be surprised that this happened. I don't understand how anyone is. It seems the most obvious thing in the world to me that it was going to happen at some point. I'm surprised it took this long. That's the only thing I'm surprised about. And we're glad. We're glad he's fine. As I said, I'm going to vote for him in November unless some crazy thing happens that I can't foresee. I don't know why I would vote for Democrats at this point. So I'm going to vote for him. I'm glad. I'm going to get the opportunity. I'm glad he's all right. I am saddened that a local hero and firefighter was killed. That is terrible. But I don't think this is the end of it. I really don't. I worry that there's going to be more violence. And violence is always bad, and people are not ready for the reality of what that looks like. People don't understand violence. They're not ready for it. They're not capable of it. And they don't know what it really is like. People who aren't violent, people who haven't lived violent lives, haven't seen violent things, they don't know what violence really is. And I wish all these people with their small brains and big mouths on the internet talking about civil war, talking about riots, blood in the street, you don't know what you're talking about. And you don't know what you're ready for, and it will Whatever you think is going to happen is not going to be the way it turns out. It is bad. Political violence is not the answer. Win at the ballot box. We still live in a republic. No matter what anyone else says, we live in a democratic republic. Violence is not the way that we should solve things, right or left. And I worry about it from the left. The left seems to think that the right has a monopoly on violence. Tell that to Steve Scalise or Rand Paul or Donald Trump. It's not the 2020 riots. Tell that to these people who have committed violence on scales we can't imagine, and then they'll just say, well, what about January 6th? Okay. One day, a couple hundred people who happen to be conservative did something that's bad. I think it's bad. I think January 6th was a mistake. I think it was dumb. But to act like the right are the violent ones, what about that person who drove a car into protesters? What about the guy who shot up that church? Oh, yeah, these are bad. These are bad people. But we can point to it on the left. And I can. They're the guy who shot up the congressional baseball game and almost murdered Steve Scalise. An assassination against the sitting president. Riots throughout the streets. The demonization of police. It's not the right who has a monopoly on violence. It occurs on both sides. And a lot of times on the left, it's worse. It just is. The right does something horrible, or someone who would consider themselves right-wing, not the right, but someone who can be described as right-wing, does something bad. They kill 6 people, and you go, oh, my God, look at these crazy right-wingers. But the Democrats burn down cities for an entire year, and everyone just forgets. It memory hold? It's gone? Where'd it go? Where are the idea that the 6 people who were killed by a car or a shooter get drowned out by the buildings and the billions of dollars worth of damage and murders that happened over the course of an entire year of our lives just 4 years ago? I don't know. It's silly to me. Anyway, we're getting off topic. I want to move on. I want to talk about something else before we go, just briefly. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I want to talk about J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's pick for VP. I'm going to pat myself on the back here. I know. It's crazy. Me congratulating myself on my own show, but I'm going to do it. I really did think this was going to be the pick. I don't know if I ever said it on the podcast, but I've talked to people about it. I said I thought he was going to pick J.D. Vance. There was a lot of speculation that he wasn't going to pick J.D. Vance because Donald Trump likes the spotlight, and J.D. Vance he shines well in the spotlight. But I think it's a great pick. I do, because Donald Trump is no longer worried about a vice president who is going to overtake him, because this is it. He's done after this. His political legacy will be cemented, and this is him passing off the reins to the next generation. J.D. Vance is young. I believe he is 39 years old. I think that's right. He's a very, very impressive individual. He's a Marine Corps veteran who spent 6 months in Iraq. He went to Yale Law School and then became famous after he wrote a best-selling memoir called Hillbilly Elegy. Now, I actually have a copy here. There it is. Look at that. So this is a great book, by the way. If you haven't read it, just go pick it up. And it's a memoir. So it's about his life. It's not a novel. It's about his life. And it basically, it's an interesting position for conservatives to take, because he takes a very conservative position on things like welfare. But he makes the point that welfare, while a lot of conservatives will talk about how it's been detrimental to the black community, just as bad in poor white communities, which is where he grew up in Appalachia. And it's a sad book in certain ways. His family dealt with drug addiction and death and poverty. And so you read the book and you get a sense for who he is, where he came from. This idea that I think a lot of people who grow up poor, who want to overcome things, they almost feel ashamed of their upbringing. And he's not in a way that ashamed makes it seem like a bad thing, but it's not. It's almost like this embarrassment that you have, that you grew up this certain way, and it comes out in the book. But it's a very good book. It's very anti the welfare state. It talks about the lack of purpose in life, and it's good that you have someone who writes well. Writing well is a sign that you are a clear thinker and an intelligent person. Not every clear thinker or intelligent person will write well. But every person who writes well is a clear thinker and an intelligent person. There's not a dummy alive who sits there and writes elegantly. It's just not true. So he obviously is very smart. And what people are talking about, which I find interesting, is the fact that in 2016, he was very anti-Trump. And some people are saying, well, he's an opportunist. He just has changed his opinions because he wants to be vice president. He wants to be in Trump's good graces, and he wants all this fame and clout and blah, blah, blah. I do not think this is true. I think it's a false argument to say that he can't be ideological and have changed his mind, because that's me. I'm not an opportunist. I'm not out here saying I'm going to vote for Donald Trump because what? I'm hoping to get something out of it? No. I wrote and spoke very passionately in 2016 against Donald Trump. I thought he was a terrible choice for president. Turned out I was wrong. Okay, well, I changed my mind. In 2020, I voted for him. In 2024, I'm going to vote for him. I think that it actually speaks highly of people when they are able to change their mind. Yes, there are opportunists out there, but when you're presented with new facts, holding on to old ideas is a great way to make yourself irrelevant, and to cement yourself into bad ideas is not a sign of character. It's a sign of poor decision-making. It's a sign of stubbornness, and these are not good qualities. It's not a good quality to be presented with facts that prove you wrong and then double down on your wrongness. J.D. Vance in 2016 didn't like Trump. In 2020, he supported him, and in 2024, he's his VP. Okay, I don't see that as opportunistic. The man has spoken a lot about how and why he changed his mind. I agree with him. I changed my mind. I was worried Donald Trump was going to be a terrible president, do terrible things, be flighty, and make America look bad, and he didn't do those things. His presidency in the first 3 years was great. It really was, and it's easy to forget that because of his bombastic nature and his tendency to say nonsense, but I don't care what people say. I care what they do, and he did good things. J.D. Vance thought the same thing. J.D. Vance is very socially conservative, so all the social issues, abortion, gay marriage, all these things. He's very conservative socially. As an economic pick, he is very unorthodox. He believes in tariffs. He's pro-union. He's big on antitrust laws. The tariffs are interesting because it's kind of a boomerang. It's come back around as a conservative idea that we're going to tariff our way out of problems with China or anyone like this. Tariffs are a tax. They're a tax on American people. Yes, they harm our foreign adversaries, and they're a way to shore up some American businesses at home. I don't like tariffs. I think they're a tax on Americans, like I just said, and I don't think that's a good thing. So, and it's not necessarily a conservative idea. It's come back around. Conservatives now are more on the tariff side, but it's interesting. Foreign policy, he's pro-Israel and anti-Ukraine. So he's that new wave of right who's not necessarily an isolationist, but is what I have always advocated for. When it's in America's interest, we should be there. And when it's not, we shouldn't. I am very pro-America on the foreign policy front. I think America should be aggressive in the world. We are the dominant power, and American hegemony shouldn't be questioned because we should be everywhere. That's what I believe. I am very hawkish on foreign policy. J.D. Vance is not that. He's said numerous times he doesn't understand the goal in Ukraine. Why are we giving them hundreds of billions of dollars? Which, by the way, I even agree with. Why are we giving them blank checks? But anyway, he's an interesting guy. I've always liked him. He is very well-spoken. So he will dust up Kamala Harris in a debate. No doubt about it. He is smart, and he is prepared, and he is a bulldog. That's the word I've been hearing to describe him. It is a great word because he gets after it. He's an attack dog, and Donald Trump is going to unleash him, and he's going to do a good job. I think J.D. Vance is a very smart guy. I'm going to reread this book, actually. My brother asked me to borrow it. I'm going to real quick try and knock it out in the next couple of days. It's only 200 pages, something like that. So it's a quick read. It's quick. So I'm going to probably read that tomorrow, and maybe I'll have some different thoughts. It's been 8 years, I guess, since it came out and I read it, so it's been quite a while. J.D. Vance, by the way, is not a safe pick for Donald Trump. There were some other safe picks. You could argue he could have picked a woman or a minority, and that would have probably been a safer pick for him because you think he's going to bring in the base. Even someone like Marco Rubio probably would have been safer, a little more mainstream, conservative, traditional guy. This is not a safe pick. This is a bold pick, and I like it. I like that this is a pick that says to me Donald Trump believes he's winning this election because he's not making a calculated pick for someone who's going to bring in a different demographic or try and work some magic with the Electoral College by picking someone from a state that he probably won't win. Donald Trump is picking someone who is very Trumpian in nature, and that's a bold pick to me. And let's see if it plays out. I believe it will. I believe it will because I believe J.D. Vance to be a very capable person who's going to do a good job. Lots of thoughts today. Again, go check out my column over in the American Thinker. I'm going to post links on both my personal Facebook page as well as the YouTube, the Chrestman Conversation Facebook page as well. Go check it out if you get a moment. As always, guys, like, comment, subscribe. I've learned something about the algorithm on YouTube, by the way, which is that if you comment on a YouTube video, it is more people get views on that video than anything else, likes or views, just a comment. So if you want to help out, a comment on the YouTube video is the way to go. Those get a lot more traction than ones that don't get a lot of comments. So as always, I appreciate everyone watching, and any questions, comments, concerns, you think I'm wrong, you think I'm right, let me know in the comments and we'll address it next week. As always, I'm Tyler Chrestman. I hope you guys have a great week, and I will catch you next Friday.